Okay, so welcome everyone to our September meeting, once again via Zoom and YouTube. As I said at the last meeting, we'd hoped to be back to normal meetings, but with all the current situation, I think we'll be on Zoom for a little bit longer, probably even next month, I would presume. Because unfortunately in Sydney, there still keeps popping up new cases and it's just not really worth the risk of having a meeting in person. Sales table update. Ben's just a little bit late to the meeting, so he said there's no real things to report at the moment, but he will be packing new orders on the weekend and sending them off on the weekend. And Brian, did you have a secretary's report?
Not a lot to report this month. We have had a few inquiries of people wanting to place ads in the magazine. I was just going to remind everybody, they probably need to get to us the first week of the month when the magazine is due out. So the next month, the next magazine would come out probably by the end of September. So we'd really want any ads for, for sale, wanted, swaps or whatever, to me or to the secretary address in the front of the magazine. Ideally by the end of the first week of September, but in this case, we're probably going to be a week or two behind. So we want it by the end of the second week. So basically this coming week, just send us any ads you want in and we can make sure they go into the magazine. But generally speaking, it would be the first week of the month that it's due out, remembering it's due out every second month. I think at the moment we've got 2 new members since the magazine came out last week, and membership's up to about 300 financial members plus our corporate members on top of that. Thanks, Matty.
Perfect, thank you. And yeah, the last meeting was the last magazine was a little bit late, so therefore this one will be a bit closer together, but that's all good. Lynn, did you have the Treasurer's report?
Lynn, you need to hold your space bar down.
Lynn, you're on mute.
Can't find her here. I can unmute her, but I'll unmute you, Lynn.
Okay.
Start again, Lynn.
Okay.
That's better.
Cash at bank as of today is $22,491.30. Do I sound like my son, Sam?
Sound very quiet.
Yeah.
Do I sound like David Samuel?
Why?
Oh, well, he's got that professional voice now.
Oh, I see. Oh, yes, yes, a radio voice. I see. Yeah.
Listeners, $22,491.30. Not much going on except for the sales table. So there you go. Thanks for having me. Good evening, viewers.
Thank you, Lynn. Sam, did you want to do government updates?
I can. I might. I'll run through a couple of things quickly. I might just share my screen actually. All right.
What are you eating, Sam?
So, right. Do you want to know what I'm eating first? I've got some Dip and Vickies because I haven't had any dinner, and I've got a J doing Coke here as well. So there you go. I'm well set up. Well set up. I'll just run through with the native animal licensing in New South Wales that will interest people. You can, hopefully you can probably read what's there. I won't go into any detail, but basically we're annoying Atticus Fleming's office with politicians and stuff at the moment. Michael Donnelly, who's currently Vice President, Michael Donnelly's president of the Animal Care Australia. So he's been really good actually getting the minister's office involved, particularly the minister's chief of staff. So there's something happening, but it's slow and steady. You might have heard in the media that there was a New South Wales Parliamentary inquiry into exotic animals in circus. But it's basically lions in circuses and dolphins. There's currently only one circus that has a couple of lions, and there's one place that has dolphins. But anyway, the scary thing was that this was by this Animal Justice Party with the nutters, and actually the problem is that the way they kind of defined circus was not what you'd think a circus is. It encompassed all our bird shows and bird sales, dog shows, and dressage for horses and jumping for horses, all sorts of stuff, cat and dog shows and sales and everything too. But I just mentioned, I don't normally sort of go on about ACA, but Michael Donnelly at that inquiry was absolutely spectacular. The evidence he gave really ran the inquiry, and there's been many MPs, particularly students of Fisher Site. Mark Banasiak was running is the chair of that. So it's really had a huge effect. Animal Care Australia for that one. I'm not sure who that is that's talking. I'll just sorry, I'll just go down. I thought I muted everybody. I'll just have to do that.
Yes, Hawk. Anyone who knew him called him that.
How long
have you known? When he came home from the war, I was just a baby. He felt it was his duty to watch over me. Every 2 days.
Was it a TV show?
Sorry, I'm just going through. Is that better? I think I've muted the person who was yakking. I've left you, Brian, unmuted, and Maddie. Everyone else, I believe, is now muted. Sorry. The Environment Act, you see, EPBC Act. That's the federal one. So there were a number of problems with that from my perspective, but actually a lot of this stuff about CITES and so on has now been sort of overwritten. What's happened is in the last week or so, since I wrote all this, the government has actually introduced an act into the House of Reps, passed the House of Reps, it's now in the Senate, that basically says they're going to divulge all responsibility for the environment to the states. So I don't know whether you've seen that in the media, but if you do, I don't know whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. I suspect it's probably a bad thing for the federal government to be doing that. But that sort of makes all that a little bit relevant. COVID, as you know, well, we're having Zoom, aren't we? Same thing's happening. In other states, things are recommencing. WA is almost back to normal. Queensland, I know, I've got some events happening. Northern Territory's barely been affected. They've sort of carried on regardless anyway. And South Australia, there are some events starting up again. And then as we know, Victoria's a nightmare. We're a semi-nightmare, and Queensland's Queensland. I'll say no more about Queensland. The bird sale code of practice, this is probably relevant for us. There's a whole lot of detail, and actually Jason Forrest, who you know, one of our members at the Finch Club, and also Bruce Golby, who's the president of the Canberra Finch Club that's affiliated with the Finch Society of Australia. They've been the main ones working on this draft, along with myself and Rod Robertson. We discussed this at the last Federation meeting. I won't go into the details of it all, but there's a few, I guess, new things that we're hoping to add to it, or that we'll likely add to it, that I'll mention in a sec. But the timeline for this, because there's been a bit of misinformation, so I'm hoping that maybe some of the people I know some of the people who are in this meeting go to other meetings or whatever, and there's misinformation from clubs that haven't come to the Federation Zoom meeting. The reality is, all we've got is an initial draft at the moment. That's all we have. We will put together a first draft to be discussed at the Federation meeting in November. We're saying that will be redrafted and whatever, and we'll talk about it, and we'll go round and round and round for months and months and months, and it'll be sometime in maybe the middle of 2021, hopefully, that we approve it. So once it's approved, I'm going to put it together into a nice A5 booklet that we can print out thousands of, anyway, I won't go into the details of the thing, and we'll circulate that widely during the remainder of 2021 at all the sales, so that all sellers and buyers and things are well aware of the new rules so that it comes into force 2022. That is the best, that's not even set in contract, in concrete. That's what we decided at the last Federation meeting. So that's as soon as it'll happen. The changes aren't going to happen until the beginning of 2022 at the earliest. We don't know what's happening with this COVID thing. Maybe it'll drag on all next year. We want to give people plenty of chance to become familiar with it, because it's really critical that everybody supports it. So some of the I won't read all this stuff. You can will be in the minutes of the Federation meeting. That's on Federation's website. If people are interested, they can go and look at our magazine, and it's always got that in it. And it's free to everybody to look at. Probably the main changes that people would notice is, one is that we're saying at the moment we'd like it to be a fully enclosed venue. The second one that's perhaps a little controversial is, in a perfect world, we would like people to kind of look towards having showcase style boxes to sell their birds. They don't, not necessarily showcase, but showcase style boxes. And we are looking at, although there's still some argument to be had, as there is about the first issue, we're looking at maybe saying in the code, no all wire cages. So getting rid of all wire cages. That's one that's a reasonably big one. Another big one is that sellers have to be responsible for the cages that they put birds into. So they will have to take some responsibility for buyers' cages. So they can't put them in, the tiny little wire cages will be outlawed, and it's a seller's responsibility to make sure that the bird goes into a compliant carry box to be taken home. And we'll also make sure that the trade sellers don't sell those sort of things. I think they're the main three. I know, I think I saw Jason come into this meeting, Jason Forrest. Is there anything you want to add, Jason?
Yeah, thanks, Sam. I think the only other thing that cropped up was temperature. So I think we were talking about having a maximum temperature within the selling hall of about 32 degrees. And there was discussion about whether that is relevant, considering that most sales start in the morning and it'll never be 32 degrees in the morning. So that's up for review as well.
Yeah, so as I say, just getting back to this timeline, if people, because I know there's people from a range of different clubs here, if they can just make it clear, probably that last item, that the very soonest that this code would come into play in New South Wales would be the beginning of 2022. It's not going to happen next year. That's not even being discussed. So if you can let people know that, and also that every single club, like this, last count, there was 247 clubs that are affiliated with Federation. They're not all in New South Wales, but a good number of them are. And yet at the last meeting, there was, I can't remember what there was, maybe 30 delegates, and probably half of them weren't even from New South Wales. So there were probably 15 from New South Wales. So unfortunately, there are clubs, we're hearing some sort of misinformation floating around out there. So maybe say to those people, it's not going to happen until 2022, and why don't you send a delegate? They're on, the meetings are on Zoom now. Why don't you have a delegate come to the meeting if you've got a problem and say something, rather than the sort of background chatter is, we're all busy, and I just don't have time to deal with gossip and gobbledygook, when people have all been invited to the meeting. So that'd be great if people could. I won't rattle on too much about the Parrot import risk assessment, except to say that there's a draft out. At the moment, be clear, I've had phone calls from people, in fact, people in the zoo community as well, who I don't know how they understand what they're on about, who are talking about other species. At the moment, it is just about parrots. That's it. They must be, there's a number of, the way it looks like it will be passed, I would say. I'd be surprised if it isn't. So for the parrot people, they'll have to do 35 days quarantine in the source country, pre-export, then transported to Australia, with a whole lot of quarantine stuff there. And then 15 days at the moment in this new Mickleham, I think we've mentioned it before, in the new Mickleham facility, in this biosecurity containment level 3 facility. So it certainly won't be a cheap there's a whole lot of tests and vaccinations and all sorts of things that go on during that period. It will not be a cheap exercise for anybody. The budgie people are looking at it. The only thing that we're trying to do, I guess, Federation, and, you know, yell out if you don't agree with it or come to a Federation meeting, our kind of policy, I guess, and we do have a policy on it, that is basically this, that we support import and export for that matter. That's economically, and we'd like it to be economically viable, so that then stops smuggling, including poaching when it's the export side of it. So we'd like to see a simplified system. We don't see why captive bred birds should be any different to dogs, cats and horses. So that's the first one. I'm not clear, just when I read the thing, I'm not clear on why we need BC3 level quarantine. That wasn't articulated well, so we'll talk about that. And the other thing I'm working on is the exchange of budgerigars between New Zealand and Australia as a sort of a special case because of the relationship we have over there, and particularly a budgerigar team. They use our judges, they use our standard, and their judges are trained by Australia, and they've been looking for literally decades to bring a team of budgies over to compete at our nationals. So, and then there's, unfortunately, on the Parrot stuff, there's been a bit of bad press. Again, you know, you can grab those. You can search for the BirdLife one if you want to online, but it's, you know, really very ignorant reporting, in my view, particularly that BirdLife one. And I think I've probably, is there any questions? Otherwise, I think I've probably talked enough.
I did see a comment there from someone about 21 degrees was the room temperature, but I was going to say 32 is probably a bit low for some of the sort of western parts of the country or New South Wales, particularly where humidity is very low.
Right.
So I think temperatures are very place-dependent thing, and humidity is as important as temperature. So when that's been refined, I think there's some issues you need to consider as well.
I suspect it probably will be lifted. If memory serves, I think the 32 might have come from Victoria. I'm not 100% sure on that. But anyway, there's certainly plenty of people saying it should be higher, and I personally don't disagree. Any other questions? Thanks, Maddie.
Thank you. And so typically speaking, September would normally be our AGM, and we have sought clarification and had a committee meeting on this. And per the fair trading guidelines, we do not actually have to have an AGM this year. We can do electronic ballot, I don't know that word, and voting and things like that if people wanted to change positions. However, at the present moment, we had a committee meeting last week and all committee members are holding positions at the moment. And if anything changes next year, we can still raise it in the meetings and things like that. They can be done. They don't have to wait till an AGM for that. And the Treasurer's report, the committee has discussed that as well, and it will be pushed to next year. So in the 2021 AGM will present both the President reports, both the Treasurer's reports, and sign off on everything then. But I'll put a bit more information in the magazine about this and maybe just a small President's report. But as Brian said at the start of the meeting, membership has continued to thrive, so we're certainly not in a bad position. And as Lynn said in her Treasurer's report, the cash at bank is still very high, so we're not in any form of trouble at the moment, and we'll provide a bit of a little update in the magazine, but the full one will be next year, will be postponed to 2021. So, and if there's any dramas, just give me a call or Brian or Sam and we'll discuss it with anyone. And then on that matter as well, the bird sale, we mentioned it at last meeting, but we won't be having a proper in-person bird sale this year. It's just not logistically likely by December to have that many people attending a big bird sale. So what we are currently looking at is an auction on the same day. So I think it's the 6th of December. And what it will be is that people drop off their birds in the morning. We swap them into a little carry cage and photograph them and put them on some sort of an auction website. And we'll have certain times for each bird. And then the thing that we're looking at is in the afternoon, certain people will take the birds to a certain drop-off point. So, for example, Dad and I are on the coast, on Central Coast, so we might take a few birds and sit at the Ourimbah exit, and a few people can meet us there to pick up birds. So we'll put more details out when it gets a bit closer, but we will need a few volunteers and a few people to do the pick up and drop off. So if anyone's interested in helping out, please let us know. Is there anything else to add, Sam?
No, that sounds good. Yeah, we thought it's a really exciting opportunity to do this while COVID's on, and if it works, you know, maybe we could do an online auction in future years as well. We'll also include, so the auction might say start, let's say there's 200 odd lots of birds that obviously you're bidding on. So obviously people want people to enter birds into the auction for a start. So the auction would continue, let's say, from once we've got all the birds booked in, might start at 11 a.m. and then people online can bid, and then it would progressively finish from maybe 2 o'clock until 3 o'clock, but you wouldn't want all the staff just finishing at the same time. You'd want to sort of stagger things a little bit. We're thinking for birds that have been passed in, what we'll do is we'll contact the few bird shops around Sydney, and we'll work out in advance what they'll pay for them, and that'll sort of be the deal if you're a seller, that you drop your birds off, and if they're passed in, they will go to the bird shop that afternoon, on the Sunday afternoon. Those guys will come and pick them up, or someone will drop them off to them at the price that they've sort of, and you'll know what that price is. So I guess that'll essentially be the reserve. So there'll be the auction for the 200 odd pairs of birds that obviously anyone can bid on, and then there'll be, and then they'll be delivered the way Maddie said. And then we'll also put buy it now items. So that would be all the sales table items, so that people can buy whatever sales table items they want, because Ben and Justin will be there on the day packing. That'll be their job, I guess, is packing orders. So anybody who buys a bird, you know, buy some sales table stuff as well. And we normally sell a heap of raffle tickets on that day. I mean, obviously the raffle tickets will be sold, you know, as we do renewals with the next magazine and the one after. But we also would be selling, you know, there'd be a buy it now for the raffle tickets as well, so people can buy those on this auction website. So yeah, quite exciting. And if there's anybody who's sort of got any experience running these things from the technology side of it, I'd be super interested to talk to them too, because I've done a little bit of research, but and I'm sure it'll be fine, but I guess I'm kind of winging it because I don't have any personal experience with doing it.
Yes, thank you. I think it's an exciting opportunity, and the committee's discussed it, and we're just going to see how it goes for this year, because, and then if it is successful, then we might do another one down the track or something, because I can kind of guess it might be a fair while before a normal style sale might be back on again. So is there any questions?
Just a question about the raffle. Have we thought about what the raffle might be this year, and how long have we got before we need to finalise that if our renewals are going to be coming out soon?
Yeah.
We send the raffle ticket details out with the renewals in September.
Some people don't read the agenda, do they?
Yeah,
Maddie,
You did raise it, you started it.
Maddie,
yes,
can I ask a question?
yes,
It's Gary here.
yes.
I'm just wondering, with your online auction, what are you going to do about birds that still need licenses and things in New South Wales?
That was something that we discussed, and I believe that the agreement was that the birds that are being sold would have to, the person that's selling them would present their details to us when they drop the birds off, and then the bidders would all be registered and have their license details written there, and then we would organise the change of transfers. But something that was one of the things that we needed to look into a bit further, because yeah, it would be definitely has to be important that that's done. And on YouTube, Ian said, how does money change hands? At this stage, we were thinking of just making it purely like an online transaction. So I presume possibly the software that we use may have a facility for it, but that's another thing that we've just got to work on in the next few weeks. Any other questions? And then I'll come back to the raffle.
Are you limiting the number of lots?
Yeah, so I think at this stage we're looking at possibly 200 lots, and we may have to limit, like you have to register before the date what birds you're going to put into the auction, so that we don't end up with, say, 50 pairs of stars or 20 pairs of some sort of a bird. So there are a few other details that we have to look into. And
also we'd considered a certain number of pairs per person, so that everyone had an opportunity to participate.
I see Queensland Finch Federation are having a sale on Friday with their auction, and all bidders have to be registered. Have you thought anything down along those lines?
Yeah, so what we'll do is beforehand, so say like we might even have a cutoff of the day beforehand that everyone's got to be fully registered, license details, and that those details will stay with the one person that's organising it, because I know that some people are probably a bit iffy with giving out all of their details, but there will have to be some sort of a way that we can keep track of it so that we don't just get randoms and things like that.
You'll certainly have to register on the site to be able to place a bid. Whether you can watch the auction, I think in a lot of the software you can watch the auction, but you must register to bid, and that includes registering how you're going to pay. I'm expecting that you have to pay by credit card or direct debit or whatever, using the system that's built in the online thing. So that once the auction's over, you will have to, just like on eBay, you got to pay for the goods. You don't pay for the goods, well then it'll go to the previous bidder, because we don't want to be mucking around, carting. I don't want to cart 30 pairs of birds or whatever is down here. Be sitting at Justin's shop drinking free coffee, and half the people don't show up or start arguing about the money, or that'd just be a nightmare. So no, I think my view is everyone's got to pay at the fall of the hammer. Now, if something happens and birds get ill or something, then I think actually the seller, unfortunately, just like in a normal one, and until the people have got the birds, if birds are ill or die or something, then unfortunately that's the seller's responsibility, as it would be at a normal sale.
And if I can ask a question there. So you're saying there's 200 bids. So in other words, if I've got 4 red face, 4 Gouldians, and 4 say long tails or whatever, diamond, five tails, whatever, I just list them all, and that's one bid. Is that right?
No. You might normally people would sell them as a pair, I guess.
Right.
So one lot would be a pair of diamond sparrows. Another lot would be a pair of long tails. But we haven't decided, so it's not impossible that you could sell a group of 4 red-faced parrot finches, for instance, as one lot. I hadn't thought it. I don't know that we discussed that, have we?
No, I think we discussed that you could put in one, it would be a lot. So you would put up one lot, and then, I guess because some birds, I know people prefer to sell as a trio. So there's lots of little details that we are working out. And I know Ian just said on YouTube as well that we may have to sort out a bit more on the credit card transactions, and that can be a bit dangerous and things like that. So it will be on the 6th of December. So we do still have a few weeks, but we want it all finalised within, I would say maybe a month's time, that we would have all these little nitty things down track and organised.
It'll absolutely be you know, one of the either Swift or PayPal will be the payment gateway. So there'll be no risk. You know, no more risk than if you buy something on, you know, from Harvey Norman online or JB Hi-Fi online or eBay online. You know, we're not going to be asking people to give us their credit card numbers. It'll be
it takes too long for us to do it, Sam, because it takes ages for me to process those things. So
yeah, no, we're not going to be doing it. There'll be a payment gateway built into the option. There is built into the option software.
No, I don't think we should worry about that mechanism. I think that's pretty easy. I think that it's more about what you know. We did discuss at the committee meeting that we wouldn't be having any uncoloured birds. We would need it to be something that's and they could. I guess we were expecting pairs, but they might be trios. And the other thing that I was talking about was you got to be a member to submit birds to the auction, but not necessarily a member to buy them. And I guess the other thing is that if anyone thinks of any other significant issues that we should consider, I'd encourage them to send their thoughts to one of the committee members so that we can make sure that we cover all the issues.
If I can just query about in past bird sales, you know, has anyone got an idea of how many birds have been, you know, offered up on the day?
Thousands.
A lot more.
Yeah. So that's what I'm thinking, 200. I guess you're picking 200 because of the, you know, it's going to be the difficulty of doing all this online and so forth and so on.
Yeah, we got to learn how to crawl before we can walk. So we want to.
So in other words, my thoughts of, you know, having 1,000 birds auctioned is not practical.
Next year.
Yeah, okay, understand now. Thank you.
Oh, good. And because we would have to have the process of booking the birds in, swapping them into other cages, putting them up, putting the details of them online, we don't want to spend 5 hours in the morning trying to do that, and we don't actually then start the auction till the afternoon. So we want to be able to have a full amount of time to just really get into the auction, get that going, see how it goes. If it's successful, then we might try again next year with a little bit extra, but it will definitely need lots of volunteers. So if anyone wants to help out, let us know.
Yeah, because we're thinking Ben's going to organise getting some like a smaller version of our sort of standard. If you've seen our standard carry box that we sell at the club, a smaller version of that. And so what'll happen when sellers drop their birds off, we'll immediately transfer them one lot at a time, or one pair normally, into a show cage, take a photo of it and put it online, and then move those birds straight away into this carry box and put the lot number on the carry box. So there'll be 200 of those carry boxes sitting there, you know? And then as the auction finishes, we've just got to separate those carry boxes, put the address of who's getting them and where they're going, you know, and negotiate all that. And we'll probably charge some amount for the carry box, and then when you return it at some stage in the future, you know, you get half the money back. So maybe we charge $10, you get $5 back when you return it, something like that. So yeah, there is a bit of work behind the scenes involved.
Yeah. And yeah, as Brian said, just if anyone has anything that they would like to input into it, just send me an email, Sam or Brian or any of us that's in the committee, an email, and we'll look to it. Or if you would like to volunteer, send us an email, because I guess the hope is that we might get a few different people from different areas so that they can be our little transport people that would take it to a spot, and then people meet them from that area, so that we don't have heaps of people coming to pick up birds.
Just on that point, Maddie, we don't really want anyone to come and pick up birds, because it becomes more of an issue for us in a COVID sense. There's lots of people queuing out the front of the building that can only have 30 people in it.
Yeah. All right. Now I might move on to my next thing. one of our members at the club has some pure Java sparrows for sale at the present moment. Now, I know that when we spoke about it at the last meeting, when we did our price guide, that Java finches are very difficult, particularly to find pure normals. And these are definitely pure normal birds. So if anyone was interested in purchasing these, just let me know and I can pass your details on to the person that has them for sale, and then they can get into contact with you. Pickup would be in the Sydney region, so just to factor that in if you were interested in buying these birds. So just let me know. And then the raffle, which Brian mentioned before. So the thought is that we will still do our raffle, our major raffle this year. However, we won't be able to do, normally our first and second prize is a pair of birds that are donated, which is usually a bit more of an expensive pair of birds. But with the logistics of COVID and all that, it's going to be too difficult because we don't want people coming to pick things up. So all 5 of the raffle prizes will be some sort of a thing that we can post to whoever wins them. So members, they'll come out with the next magazine, like to buy the tickets for it. And then we'll also have an option on the day of our auction to purchase some tickets. And then at the end of the auction, we'll draw the raffle. But if anyone has anything that they would like to donate, we've got a few ideas so far, but as Brian said, it will need to be finalised within probably the next week or so. So if anyone's able to help out, that would be greatly appreciated. Just send me an email and we can sort that one out. And was there anything else?
Just the renewals. Normally with the next magazine, we would get our first renewals that come out. And so you'll get a renewal next magazine, in the December magazine, and then February. So I guess that's still the plan. Is that what we're going to do it for renewals?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, we'll do it now and then again in the next magazine.
Yep. All right.
All right. And did anyone else have anything else to discuss that they wanted to put forward? My last thing before we go on to the guest speaker for tonight was normally around this time of year, I'll ask if anyone has any ideas of talks or topics that they wanted to see next year, or if you wanted to volunteer yourself possibly for a meeting. Following the last few months with Zoom, we are interested in possibly seeing, once we get back to in-person meetings, we might be able to use Zoom at our meetings and put it up on the projector. So just because you might not live near Sydney doesn't mean that we can't have you as a guest speaker. So if anyone was interested in that for next year, or if there's something that you want to hear at a meeting, just let me know and I can try and organise it, see if there's anyone that might be able to present on that certain topic. So just to keep in mind for the next few months while I start to get next year all into order. And we might go to our guest speaker tonight, who is one of our very own Sam Davies. He's presenting on Gouldian inheritance, and yes, thank you, Sam.
Thank you. Just get the screen up. Can I just say, everybody see that? Can I just say up front, I've been absolutely flat out, and I probably haven't given this the attention that it deserves. It's sort of a talk, I suppose, I've been thinking of doing for many, many years, because people continually question. I know a lot of people obviously have been breeding Gouldian finches forever. This is probably really simple stuff, but I think it's a kind of a good example to teach people about, sex-linked dominant, sex-linked recessive, and autosomal dominant and recessive as well, which is sort of basic to any inheritance for bird people. So I guess that's why I picked it. And it always struck me as really weird to think that you can have a yellow-headed cock, and a black-headed hen, and all the young are red-headed. That's actually possible, and in fact is quite likely if you did that. There's also sort of a whole lot of scientific articles, and I'll mention a couple, but if you just search for them, about Gouldian finch inheritance and stuff, there's a ton of them. I mean, there's Simon Griffith, who we've had speak, and Sarah Pryke, and all the rest of them, and the ones in the Gouldian, Save the Gouldian Fund, worked with them many years ago. But there's a lot of more recent scientific articles as well, where Gouldians are looked at, and particularly their inheritance. So there's a heap on it. There's also some overseas sites that sort of have calculators and things to calculate this stuff. But at the same time, I think it's really important that everybody just kind of has a rough understanding of how this stuff works. And when I say rough, I mean it, because I don't profess to be an expert. I can do the maths, but I'm not a scientist. I don't profess to be. So I'll just first of all, we'll concentrate on the head colours, but obviously this can work for other things. So first of all, let's just have a think. Where does the colour come from? Like how do you get to see that this is a red-headed bird or a yellow-headed bird, or some people call it orange, or a black-headed bird? So there's two sort of ways. This is the same for all birds. Basically, there's pigmentation, so the actual colour of the feather. So it can be, and that's brought up by carotenoids or melanins. So basically, the carotenoids, there's the reds, and there's the yellow. That's the reds and the yellow colours that you see in all birds, and the melanins is the sort of blacks and browns. And then there's structural colour. So that's not, the feather is not actually that colour. It's got sort of it's got an array that reflects the light or refracts the light in such a way that it appears to be a different colour, when in fact it's not. So that, particularly in regard to Gouldian finches, that tends to be the blue that you see in them. So, sorry, there's somebody else just coming in. So if you look at what you've got the reds and the yellows and the blacks and browns as well, but that's not quite so obvious to Gouldian finches. Mind you, it's there. We've just had a cinnamon mutation appear, which removes the black and leaves the brown. So that there is still brown in Gouldian finches, just not obvious. So if you think we've got red, so you've got red in the head, you've got yellow in the head and on the tip of the beak, which we'll talk about. You've obviously got black in the face. Blue, you've got the blue around the face mask, and obviously you've got blue mutations of Gouldians as well, which is, when you think about it, if you combine blue with yellow, that gives you the green that's in the Gouldian, doesn't it? So it's sort of that pigmentation yellow with the refracted blue gives you the green. And then the same thing with red to make purple in the breast. So all those colours allow you to make up all the multiple colours that we find in Gouldians. And by removing one or adding one or removing, in different combinations, you get all the different range of colours. So I'll just try and, I'm aware that there's somebody that's not muted. And unfortunately, I'll just try and work out.
Probably Debbie, you need to mute your phone, Debbie.
Somebody's got their phone going. It's feeding back.
Is that better?
Just mute your sound altogether if you can. To see. Oh no, hang on. Here it is. Right there. I'll just go down. That's all right. I'll mute you.
Sorry.
Let's go. So birds have a different arrangement of their sex chromosomes compared to us mammals. So in birds, there's two big sex chromosomes in males. Look at this picture here. Big, long Z ones. So that's the male. He gives one of those to each of his kids, one or the other randomly, whereas the female has a Z and a W. The W is only small, so not much in terms of what we're worried about. We're concerned about is held on the W chromosome. Most of the information's on the Z. So this is how sex link works. So if that trait, if it's a hen and that trait is on that Z chromosome, there's no other opposing trait to dominate it. So it will appear. So in other words, in the case of redheadedness, if the hen has the gene for if she has the redheadedness on her Z chromosome, then she will be redheaded. She'll appear redheaded. She'll have a red head. With the male, he could have a red here or a red here or a red in both positions. So then, and because redheadedness is sex-linked dominant to the black, it doesn't matter whether he's got 2 reds or a red and a black. So the capital R here is saying that's the red trait. The little r, little black r, that's the recessive one. That in this case is the black trait. So a bird, so in terms of redheadedness, the cocks can be RR, 2 reds, holding it on the Z chromosome and this Z chromosome. They can just have 1 red on either of these and the other one's black. Because redheadedness is dominant, the bird will be red. It only needs 1 for the bird to be red. Now consider blackheadedness. So blackheadedness is sex-linked recessive to red. So you need to have, if you look down here, you need to have 2 black-headed genes if you're a boy. Otherwise, if you only had 1, the other one would be red and it would dominate and you'd be redheaded. So you need to have both little r's, That Z chromosome and that Z chromosome must contain the trait for blackheadedness for you to actually be black. So you can't be, if you look here, you can't have, like when we refer to a split, we mean a bird that looks black. Sorry, a bird that look, for instance, in this case, this bird will look red, but it's carrying the black gene. Okay. Whereas for a bird to look black, it must be all black. Okay, because it's recessive. The hens, again, they obviously on their Z chromosome, they must be carrying the black-headed one. So let's have a look now at, so that's the redheaded and the blackheadedness. So these are the different combinations, remember? So a cock can have both reds. He can have a red and a black. In both those cases, he's going to appear to be a redhead. You won't be able to tell the difference. But you know, you'll have to breed with him to find out whether he's one or both. Whether he's got both reds or only 1 red and a black. If it's a black-headed cock or a black-headed hen, if it's a black-headed cock, you know that it doesn't hold. There's no way in the world that it can give a red-headed gene to its offspring. The hens, they're either red or they're black. They don't carry. What you see is what you get. If it looks red, it's red. If it looks black, it's black. Let's move on to so that's sex-linked inheritance, and we'll look at some pairings later on. Yellow-headedness is autosomal. So autosome just means non-sex chromosomes. So these are the rest of the chromosomes. So the rest of the pairs that have nothing to do with determining the sex. So the Z and the W pairings, they determine the sex. If you've got a Z and a W, you'll be a hen. If you've got 2 Zs, you'll be a cock. Whereas for us boys in mammals, remember, it's the other way around. It's the men that have got the X and the Y, and the women that have got the double X in mammals and humans, obviously. So autosomal, both the same. Doesn't matter whether it's a hen or a cock. So for yellow-headedness, you've got 2. So we're saying a capital Y means you're carrying the gene for yellow-headedness. A little y means you're carrying the gene for not being yellow-headed, essentially. So it's yellow-headed and not yellow-headed. So this bird here is carrying a yellow-headed gene and a not yellow-headed gene. Because yellow-headedness is autosomal recessive, that bird will actually not appear to have a yellow head. It'll be a split because it's recessive. To actually appear yellow, it's got to have 2 yellows. Okay, it's got to have 2 yellows when it's recessive to appear yellow. Otherwise, it'll appear something else, not yellow. There's another complication with the yellow-headeds. There's 2 versions of yellow-headedness. There's yellow faced with a yellow tip beak, and there's black faced with a yellow tip beak. And the reason is yellow face requires, so you've got to be a redhead to look like that top picture. So you've got to be a red-headed bird to have a yellow face. So that bird there, for instance, is one of these possibilities here. It must be one of those possibilities there. Well, assuming it looks like a cock to me. It's either got to be a double factor redhead, in which case it's going to have a red face because it's a redhead, remember? And then it's also double factor yellow face. So that means it's a yellow head. So it's a red-headed bird with a yellow, that's also a yellow. So that every time you see a yellow-faced bird, it's also a red-headed bird as well. It's a yellow-faced bird is a red-headed bird and a yellow-headed bird. It's both. Or it could be capital R, little r. So that's saying this carries one red-headed gene and one black-headed gene, but the red-headed gene is dominant. So the bird is still a red-headed bird. It's also a yellow-headed bird. So because it's a red-headed bird and also a yellow-headed bird, its face appears yellow as well as its beak. The other possibility, this is a hen this time. So that's the W gene. That's not, that doesn't, remember here. So that's that little one that had nothing to do with the color of the head. So this time this is a hen. So this is a red-faced hen that's also got two yellow genes. So both pardon me, both are yellow. So it's a red-faced hen that's also a yellow face. So a red-headed hen that's also a yellow face. So that's these guys. So that's really a red-headed bird that's also a yellow-headed bird in general. Then we get to this next possibility. So these ones here. So this is a black-headed bird that's also a yellow-headed bird. Okay, now because it's a black-headed bird, it can never be yellow-faced. It can never have a yellow face because it must have a red head before that. So I'm splitting the yellow-headedness into two, I guess. You've got the yellow face and you've got the yellow tip beak. A yellow-headed bird is the YY. For that yellow-headed bird to have a yellow face, it must also be a red-headed bird. Otherwise, it'll have a black face, but the beak still stays yellow. See how that beak's yellow? Whereas, there was another picture back here somewhere. Whereas that bird there's got a red tip on its beak. So that bird there is a normal black-faced bird. Whereas this bird here is actually a yellow-faced bird that's got a black head. I'm sitting here thinking I'm confusing the crap out of everybody, aren't I? I hope people understand this. Let's have another look. This cool graphic kind of summarizes it, I guess, a little bit. To have a black head, males need 2 copies of the black gene because it's recessive. Okay, it's sex-linked recessive, the blackheadedness. So males have got to have 2 copies. If they didn't have 2 copies, the other copy that's not black would be red, and they'd be that case down there. For females, it's only this Z chromosome. The W chromosome is kind of not relevant. So for black-headed, the females only need 1 black gene. For redheads, the males need either 2, in which case it's a double factor red, or 1 like this. So this one will appear to be redheaded. So it'll look exactly the same as this double factor bird, appear to be redheaded, but it's actually carrying the black gene. So I mean, most people would say it's split to, so it's a redhead split to blackhead. Whereas for the hens, there's only 1 possibility. There's only that big Z chromosome. They only have 1 big Z chromosome. So it has to be red for the bird to be red. Then the yellow head. Yellow heads, again, remember it's autosomal. So this is saying the bird has to be a red for it to have a yellow. Now this is just talking, really this should say yellow face there, I'd say, based on what we were saying before. So for this bird to have a yellow face, it must be either a double factor red bird and a double factor yellow, remember the yellow is recessive, so there's got to be 2 yellows. So there's 2 yellows there, 2 yellows there, 2 yellows there in each case. And that's got to be paired with one of these red, so paired with one of these redhead possibilities here. Now, the thing they're missing on this one is the cases that we talked about here. So this is the case where the bird is a visual black face with a yellow tip beak. So that's a yellow bird on a black face that's also a black face bird. We'll just have that yellow tip. All right, now let's try and look at some, let's maybe look at some matings. So I've just put together a really simple spreadsheet. Look at the one that I guess was advertised. So this bird here, if you just look on the right-hand side where I've got cock and hen, I'm just entering it there. So this is saying this is a double factor red bird, RR, and a double factor yellow bird. Okay, so that bird is going to appear to be a yellow-headed bird with a yellow tip beak, right? Yellow-faced bird with a yellow tip beak, because it's a red bird and a yellow bird. So that's when you put that cock in your ovary, it just looks like a yellow cock. Now, it's also a double factor red. You may or may not know that, but it could be a single factor red when you track it in your ovary. But let's say it's a double factor red, double factor yellow. The hen, we're saying, is going to be a black hen. So she must, black-headed hen, so she must look like this. Remember, we're saying at the start, I said if you put a yellow cock to a black hen and you get all red young. So that's what we're trying to, that's what I'm illustrating here. So here's a yellow cock, here's a black hen. So this hen got the little r, so that's black, that's the W, that's not relevant, and then 2 no yellow genes. So you're not carrying yellow at all. So when this is matched up, so this cock, in terms of redheadedness and blackheadedness, here's the RR from the cock. So those 2 R's there. Here's the single R from the hen, that little R there. So when that's matched up, all the young are going to be, they're all going to be, the cocks are going to be redheads that are actually split for black. So they get a red gene from dad, that red gene there in this case, and a black gene from mum. So they're going to be red split black, red split black. So all the cocks, red split black. The hens down here are going to be redheads. Okay, so far they're all red-headed birds, aren't they? All those are red-headed birds. That's a red-headed bird split for black, red-headed cock split for black. So 50% cocks, 50% hens, all red. And then when we come and look at what's happening with the yellow over this side, the cock was yellow. The hen was not yellow. So all the young are going to be, they're going to have 1 yellow gene and 1 not yellow gene. Because it's recessive, none of these young are going to be yellow heads. They're all going to be split to yellow. So all the young will appear red. So you've got a yellow cock, a black hen, all the young are red. Now, there's obviously a whole heap of other possibilities here. So, for instance, if instead of a double factor red, let's try a single factor red that's also yellow. So in this case, things will be different, won't they? So this is a red cock and a black hen still, but this time you're going to end up getting, that's a red cock split to black. That is actually going to be a black cock because it's RR. It's got 2 black genes, so it'll be black. That's a red hen, and that's a black hen. They're all split to yellow, just the same as they were before. So you'll get 25% red cocks split to black, and you'll know they are for sure. You'll get 25% black cocks. You'll get 25% red hens and 25% black hens. And they'll all be split to yellow. And we can try all the different possibilities. I mean, I can, if people want to muck around with this spreadsheet, we can probably email it to people if needed. I'll just jump back to where I was. If anybody's got any questions about the layout, I'll just show you 1 or 2 of these online calculators as well. some people have probably seen them. There's a whole stack. If you search, there's a whole stack of people that have written these things. Here's two. This guy's actually done some really cool articles as well about the structure of Gouldian feathers, which is quite interesting. If you want to have a read. So he sort of looked at it a little bit differently. So let's try a. So he's got a whole lot of possibilities here as well. He's got the chest color and the body color as well here, and so you can choose the various different. So he's got the black-headed with a yellow tip beak, and the black-headed that's and all the different possibilities of what you can have, and then it'll obviously calculate what you're going to end up with. There's another. I won't go into the details of it here. There's another example here that works quite well. So he's actually called them the Z chromosome and the W chromosome for the females. So maybe we'll just put in, what did we have? We had what did we have as the first one? We had a yellow bird, didn't we? So that would be a redhead. We had a redhead with it that was a yellow head. So that's actually a yellow bird. And then our female was a black bird, wasn't it? So it was a black-headed bird like that. And we'll just leave it with no yellow. And then when we calculate, we end up with 50% red and 50% red. So we've got, so that agrees with what we were calculating before. So this is quite good too. But it's good to be able to do it yourself, I think, because this sort of inheritance works for everything, as long as you know whether the thing's dominant, recessive, sexually dominant, sexist, recessive. I might just mention a couple of other common mutations that we've got. So the back of the bird, there's what we call European yellows. I'll just jump back to the main screen. I might even stop sharing that for a minute. So we've got quite a number of mutations, of course. We've got the European yellow, which is a little bit different. It's called co-dominant. So what happens, sex-linked co-dominant. So with the European yellows, you can only have yellow hens. So that's a yellow-bodied hen. So essentially the blue's been removed from the green and you're left with yellow. So you can have a yellow-bodied hen, but because it's co-dominant, you end up with a double factor yellow-bodied cock that looks yellow, but the single factor yellow factor cock that some people call incorrectly a dilute, and there's another name for it too that it's crossed my mind. But that single factor one is halfway between a green and a yellow, isn't it? And so that's co-dominant. So it's like there's a bit of the green and there's a bit of the yellow still in there. So that's sex-linked co-dominant. Then you've got a few recessive ones. Our Australian yellow is recessive. What else is there? There's the new cinnamon that's just come in. That's sex-linked. There's the blues, which are autosomal recessive as well. There's the white breast. That's autosomal recessive as well. But then it's also sort of co-recessive with the lilac. You can't be both white-breasted and lilac. And I think the white breast is dominant over the lilac. So let's say if a bird carries a white-breasted gene and a lilac gene, it'll end up being white-breasted. It needs two lilacs to be lilac, but so that's a little bit of a weird one too. But all these things combined, and I mean, obviously all the people who breed all the other various mutations, it's the same thing with painted and with, the various long-tail mutations and Parson mutations and parrot finches and so on. Finally, I'll just show you some of these scientific articles, just so that you might like to, if anybody wants to go and read them, they can. There's a couple that I had up, where are we, that I had open. This one's a fairly new one that people may not have seen. I believe it was, hang on, where's the 2017. It does get pretty involved, but it focuses on the Gouldian finch. And there's a ton of really cool stuff in here if you're interested in reading about mutations and how they formed and and the nature of feathers and how the different, how light works and the chemical composition of feathers and so on. So this is sort of saying how the reflected colour changes and it's based on the structure of the feathers. So that's an interesting read, I thought, that I'll put in the magazine actually. And then the other one that I thought was really good for this sort of stuff was this article in Nature. That's another one there's a lot of older ones. It's a reasonably recent one too, I believe. I can't quite see the date there, but it was reasonably recent too, and it's well worth a read too if you're interested in this sort of stuff. So it's interesting. I always find it amazing that the Gouldian is used as the example so often in these sort of scientific articles. And I guess that is it, unless anybody's got some questions for me. If you want to ask a question, just hold down the spacebar.
And also on YouTube, if anyone's on YouTube and have any questions, Sam and I both have it up so we can see what the comments are. Jeff mentioned Australian dilutes as well.
Oh yes, they're recessive too, autosomal recessive. And then of course there's all the ones, the combinations of mutations. When you put the Australian yellow and the blue together, what do they call it? What's the agreed name for them now? I remember arguments five or six, or maybe it was 10 years ago when they first came in. People were calling them Aussie blues, but are there any Gouldian breeders who think that there's agreement?
AVB they call them.
What
Australian variegated blue.
Australian variegated blue. Well, there you go. There's another one. Some people were calling them that. I think was that a Don Crawford name? I believe, perhaps. And then Don Crawford's got his limes. I'm not sure what are they. I think they're autosomal recessive as well. If I believe. Yeah.
The Euro ones are pastels.
Yeah, when they're with the blue.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's so many. We picked up a pair at the bird sale last year that were very interesting looking, but they didn't breed and then they didn't make it. So I don't know. They were cool coloured though. They were really light coloured. Maybe cinnamons.
Yeah, I don't know if there's many cinnamons around.
Does anyone?
And there is the sea green as well.
And there's dark factors. Did you mention those?
That's right. There is too. There's dark factors. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a few people looking at those at the moment from what I've seen on Facebook. Does anyone else have anything they wanted to discuss or anything? Or questions? No? Thank you, Sam, for a very informative discussion. It's quite complicated, but I think once you have all the pictures and the diagrams, it does help it out a lot more.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Apologies if it was a bit rushed.
Okay. It was a bit of a last minute thing. I unfortunately had someone else drop out, but it was fantastic. Thank you, Sam. And does anyone else? I think that might be it for the meeting tonight. Thank you, everyone. Let me double check YouTube.
Thanks, Maddie.
All right, that's all good. Thank you, everyone, for another great meeting, and we shall see you all back next month, the second Wednesday at 7:30.
See you then.